My name is Sean Culey. I'd just like to thank, obviously, SCL Hub for asking me to speak, and a certain company called Every Angle who contacted me and said, Sean, can you come and speak on our behalf? I said, certainly. I'd like to talk to you today, if I can, a little bit about some of the work that I do, but really bring it into, I guess, some of the benefits that I think some companies like Every Angle specifically can bring to help companies develop a more agile, adaptive, and engaging environment. I really probably should have had a slide saying, who's this guy and why should we listen to him? Probably at the start of the presentation. My name is Sean Culey. I travel the world, speak a lot, write a lot, and get paid helping companies be better by being much more customer focused and transform out of this sort of silos into much more lean, value chain driven organizations. That's what I do to get paid. Okay, so let's have a little talk about this. Now, I fly most weeks, and if the airport that I travel out of, if I knew that, for example, that basically they judged whether or not they're going to land the next plane by looking at the planes that had already landed and whether or not they'd crashed or not, or whether or not they were on time or not, I'd probably be a little bit worried about that. And maybe if they had a different control tower for managing planes that were taking off, and then they had a different control tower to manage the planes that were landing, and then they had a different control tower that was managing gate allocations, and another one that was doing the fuel supply, and another one for logistics, I probably wouldn't be too confident in their ability to get me there on time and safely. And if they all measured their definition of success somewhat differently as well, and you only communicated infrequently to figure when things actually went wrong, when a plane didn't land on time, or when someone got there and the luggage wasn't there, or when it crashed or whatever, I'd be concerned. I wouldn't want to use that airport because it'd be chaos. There'd be the flights be delayed, luggage would be all over the place. It'd look pretty much like most of the airports I go to, most of the time, actually, to be fair. So why do we run our supply chains like that? Why do we have different departments set up that are in silos? They don't talk to each other. They only communicate when things go wrong. They have their own measures of success. And I did a lot of work around, so what keeps CEOs awake at night? Now, this is obviously the things that were in the remit of control. There are other things that keep them awake. They might be worried about Brexit. They might be worried about global oil price. They might be worried they're not going to sit in front of a panel of MPs and explain why they've just lost the business, as a couple did yesterday. But the things within their control, one of the biggest issues is actually the ability to execute on their own strategies. There's no lack of strategies in this world. There's lots of smart people who come up with smart strategies, but the problem is none of them get executed very well. And as a result of that, the performance of the value chain concerns them greatly. Our ability to delight our customers, to deliver on our promises, to move from just satisfying needs to actually delighting customers. Why is that so difficult? Well, the two are related. Because if I don't know what the goals is and don't know how I contribute to the goal, then the chances are each function is trying to figure out its own way of managing its own activities. They're concerned about risks and compliance. These tend to keep them awake at night. And one of the big issues is there is a global war for talent going on right now. So there's sort of smart creatives, as Google call them. These new talent millennial people who come in who've got a different mindset. They think differently. They act differently. They're not expecting a job for life. They want things a little bit sooner. And there's a war for that talent. And some companies are winning that war, and other companies, unfortunately, are not. So what we end up with is a lot of frustration. So all the businesses that I help, I ask a sort of very simple question that says, what's it like to work around here? Well, give me a few words that tell me what it's like to work in this organization. And the word that comes out again and again and again and again is frustrated. Which is not a bad word. It's better than disillusioned or suicidal or something else that you can mention, but frustration seems to be a key word. Because we've got frustrated leaders. We think we know where we want to go. I know what the goals is. Why aren't we getting there? Why is it so difficult? We end up with frustrated customers. Why do you keep dropping the ball on the deliveries? Why don't we get what we want when we want it? Why is it that Amazon can deliver anything next day and you seem to take 6 weeks? We have frustrated, sometimes scared CFOs who are worried about what's actually going on in all these spreadsheets and all this detail down at level. What risks are we exposed to that I just don't know about? And we're getting frustrated employees. Surely there's a better way. And sometimes you get these employees who are, well, like, these T-shaped people who come into organizations who've come from leading businesses, come from Unilever, P&G, somewhere like that, and they come into a different organization, knowing that there's probably a better way of working, but the culture of the organization sort of drags the arms down until you turn very I-shaped. And usually what happens is one or two things. They either quit or they quit and stay. Not sure which one's worse. Root cause of a lot of this is a lack of alignment. It's a lack of strategic alignment and cross-process functional alignment. And some of the businesses that I've helped, I ask a number of different questions just to try and get the lie of the land, go around, speak to a lot of executives, speak to a lot of managers, what's going on here? And we can see this particular organization, what was the number one issue? Well, the ability to execute effectively was the thing that bothered them. Why? Because there was a complete lack of clarity of the goals and the strategy. The organizational culture seemed to get in the way. As Peter Drucker once said, eat strategy for breakfast, and we don't communicate very well. And as a result of that, our people and process and systems seem to be somewhat bureaucratic. So I asked questions like, do you think there's a clear strategy to deliver these goals? And in this particular organization, 13 people said no, and 4 said yes. Who were the 4? The guys at the top. Well, yes, of course there is. Then I asked another question. Would you think that other people would know what the strategy is? And even then, they didn't even think the answer was yes to that. So we think we know what there is a clear strategy, we just don't think we've told anyone. Are the right things measured? Mostly no, sometimes yes and no, which is really a no in different clothes. Do you feel that the business is joined up end to end? No. And this is indicative. This is going on across organizations. And whenever I present sort of more detailed results, most companies say, was that us? Did you analyze us? Because it's the same thing again and again and again. Functional organizations end up being frustrated. And it's driven from the top. So these behaviors are driven by the top. The lack of clarity means that, you've got people trying to move their part of the organization forwards. Everyone's trying to do the best they can for the business. It's just not joined up. And we have different pressures and different levers that get pulled. So service is poor, so we need to drive better service, which means we drive inventory into our supply chains. And then the finance guy looks at it and says, good God, where's all this stock come from? Can you drive that out of our supply chain? Can we cut costs? And then service drops, and then we go back to, and we're just pulling different levers in the organization. And it comes from the top. So we have this dynamic tension all the time between cost, value, service. And if we have these I-shaped people in the organization, we've got a guy at the top who believes he knows what the strategy is, and he's trying to operate in a T-shaped way. And we have different customers who value different things. Some customers value low-cost products, some value high reliability, some value innovation. But most organizations just have one set of supply chain processes. They have a one-size-fits-all supply chain. And what we have is then, therefore, different departmental heads who say, well, if we can do different things, I can succeed. So we have the sell guy saying, if we had a bigger choice, if we was more innovative, if we have shorter lead times, we could sell more. And then the delivery guy says, yeah, well, we can improve our fill rates and we can reduce our carbon efficiencies if we had a smaller range and more consistent demand. And a manufacturing guy said, if you can drive some of the complexity out of the supply chain, if we could do longer run times, then actually we could be more efficient in our manufacturing processes. And the source guy said, well, we'd win if we had cheaper suppliers, maybe we should off-source. And the suppliers would go, yeah, we can do that if you buy bigger volumes and give us longer lead times. And the guy at the bottom says, yeah, can you do all of that, but cheaper, please, with less inventory and less cost? Ring a bell, anyone? And then, of course, we say, well, don't worry about all of that. You don't need to fix that. You just need a software product, because we have a software product. Unfortunately, that's a bit rainbows and unicorns, really. Comes along and says, we can fix all these problems. The reality is, at best, you get a workhorse where you end up doing a lot of the work behind your team, or your IT department are doing a lot of work to try and plow this furrow of excellence. And actually, what you really end up is loads and loads of different requests on your product, and it ends up dangling its legs in the air like this, going, I just can't handle all of these different questions and all of these different unique ad hoc things that you need, because we're just structured to answer standard type of questions. So the IT department feels like it's bought a product that's looking a bit like that donkey. And because what we're really after is we're after some sort of control tower. Like the airport, we'll have the control towers. And because we don't have that, because we have different functional measures and different functional behaviors and our own different tools, we end up wasting a lot of effort, really. Downloading stuff into Excel, writing Z programs from SAP, putting stuff into Microsoft Access, trying to create our own. I have one company, the biggest manufacturer in the UK, virtually had SAP and then tried to recreate SAP on Microsoft Access, which was interesting. And then what that means is they have loads of meetings that aren't particularly productive, trying to figure out what the hell's going on here. Where are we with this? Where are we with meeting these customers' orders? Spend huge amounts of time downloading and manipulating data. I know every angler who asked me to speak recently spoke to one of the leading food manufacturers in the UK who worked out that in one department alone they spent 12.5 man-years just manipulating and downloading data. They spend lots of time doing excess overtime, managing multiple versions of the truth, firefighting. And actually what that means is we waste money all the time as organisations. Because we don't know where we are at any point in time, we have multiple shipments and back orders. This costs us money. Penalties, lost sales, unplanned discounts, frustrated employees, obsolete stocks, expedites. It all costs us money. There isn't a tool that provides a silver bullet to that, but what it means we need is tools that provide us with the capability to answer the right questions once we know what those questions are. Because really, we're getting more complicated. The world is getting more complicated. We not only need to understand the planes that have landed, we need to understand the interrelationships between the planes and the air. Different purchase orders, sales orders, production orders, and actually the impact on the planes that have yet to take off. If this purchase order is late, what's that going to mean? Is it going to affect this production order? Does the production order contain items in my bill of material that's contained on that customer order that's going to be late? Which ones are critical? Which ones can I delay? This is sort of prescriptive analytics that we kind of need our fingers on that says, what's actually going on here and what is the impact? And we're working in an increasingly complicated world, so there's more planes in the air than there's ever been before. We've got more customers, more channels. And the fact of the matter is, most companies try to jump to some sort of excellence, but realize there's actually a lot of hard work here. So I always use the analogy of the shard and says, in order to build something that beautiful, something that's going to stand the test of time, the first thing I had to do was dig a bloody big hole, which was messy, time-consuming, hard work. But if I didn't do that, the first ill wind that comes along is going to knock that thing down. And this is like most companies. They're not prepared to do this bit. They just want that bit. Give me the solution. I'm not prepared to do the hard work. And this could be cleaning your data, understanding small data before you start talking about big data. Being able to put processes in place, understanding how people should work together, the sort of hard discipline things. In a lot of cases, this is defining rules and behaviors in your organizations that need to be in place in order to get the value from whatever investment you're making, be that SAP or whatever transformation project you're doing. Because there's a universal rule, and this universal rule is this: you can't control what you don't understand. And it's very difficult to improve what you can't control. So don't even talk to me about innovation unless you can prove first that you're in control and understanding what's really going on. So we need to understand what's really going on in our business. What's causing all of these deviations? Is it data issues? Is it compliance issues? Is it people not working well together? And one of the things I need to understand more than anything else is what is it we're actually trying to achieve here? Who are the customers that we're actually focusing on? What do they value? Have we aligned our processes in such a way that we're delivering that value to them? Or are we just measuring activities? Because it's all about effective outcomes, not efficient activities. And most organizations focus on efficient activities. I sat once in a board, the CEO asked me to just sit in on one of the board meetings. And I sat and I watched the heads of every department go around the table. And everyone basically said, yeah, hit my numbers. Sales team, hit my numbers. Marketing, yeah, we've done everything we said we would do. Production, yeah, hit our numbers. He went around the table and he came to the end and he said, well, that's brilliant. Apparently everyone's hit their numbers but me. So how does that work? If every component part of the business has done what it said it's going to do, but the business is losing, how does that work? Well, it must be that they're misaligned. They're not joined up. So we need to understand what is it we're trying to achieve and then understand the root cause of issues and losses and disruptions, because that will help us to improve things, improve service, inventory, supply performance, plan adherence. Once we start to focus on control, once we understand and are able to control, then improvement opportunities will manifest themselves all over the place. I often get told, our company's not very innovative. We need to bring someone in, we need to bring it, get people from Google, get people from other organizations to come in and help you, Sean, because, we're not very innovative. There's never any lack of innovation. Just people don't know what they're supposed to be doing, they don't know where they're aiming for, and they're never asked. That's the problem, not giving the tools or the capabilities to be asked. There can be people who are warehousemen, who believe their job is to just pick and pack, but they don't understand they're a component part in an effective supply chain. And what do we mean by effective? So high levels of responsiveness or reliability? And if so, how could you yourself contribute to that? Well, no one's ever asked them, never ever actually enabled them to define contribution. And once you define contribution, you can narrow the focus and the metrics down to those 2 or 3 things you actually want them to focus on that adds value. But most companies don't do that. They never narrow it down because they're unclear as to what the purpose is, because it changes all the time. But once we understand, we can control the elements, which allows us to improve the top and bottom lines, which allows us to remove all of this wasted effort and money that we saw earlier and redirect it into more innovative activities that moves us up our customers' hierarchy of needs. That means that they would choose us rather than someone else. So you need to understand that before achieving this. And control lays the foundations. And some of this is the foundational stuff. What is the data that we need to run our operations? Who is responsible? Who's responsible for master data? Who's responsible for transactional data? If we don't know what's going on with our suppliers, is it because our schedule line dates on our purchase orders are pieces of fiction that have never been updated because no one's responsible for it? Who owns each piece of data in your system? What are our processes? Are they the blueprints that you did 10 years ago when you went live with SAP, or do you have an up-to-date version of that and knows exactly how we should be controlling processes? And people generally have an impact on business. I don't know if you found that, but I generally find people have quite a big impact on the success of the organization. What exactly are they doing? And what is it they should be doing? Because I bet that hasn't been clearly defined. How do we operate together in order to become innovative, in order to be able to free our creative talents? Because hindsight hurts. Well, just measuring landing planes hurts. So, we need to move from having tools and processes the way we just look at what happened to create real insight that says, what is happening right now and why? And even that's not good enough. What we really need is we need to be able to have options. We need to be able to use prescriptive analytics and have processes in place that enables us to say, this doesn't look good. What are our options and how can we operate in order to deliver things to our customers so that we don't let them down? What is the impact of that? So it means more than counting the planes that have landed and really understanding the different planes that are in the air. So if we're in customer service or the cash, we need to understand things like, not just what was our service level last week, but what is the expected delivery reliability? How much stock's held up by old orders? What's the reason for current back orders? What are the main causes of late or short deliveries? These are all things we can act on before they've happened, rather than just measuring things after they've happened, which is what most companies do. One company I helped, probably one of the jobs I have is I'm on the European leadership team of the Supply Chain Council, so it's done the SCORE model. Anyone here use SCORE, know of SCORE? One guy at the back, brilliant. Fantastic. And one company was probably the only company I've ever met that used the perfect order fulfillment metric, probably. On time, in full, perfect quality, perfect documentation. Most companies go for case fill or line fill or some deviation of that. So they had a really tough measure. This is brilliant. We weren't a particularly big organization, medium-sized business. And she said, yeah, it's even better than that, Sean. Comes on our phone every day. Fantastic. Every single day you send out your perfect order fulfillment of what it was yesterday. Brilliant. And they hit problems. They were very functionally fractured. They decided that because their main measure of success was buying price versus selling price, that they could buy stuff cheaper if they imported it from China. And one of the big products that they purchased was gloves, latex gloves. They supplied education and care homes specifically. It's a big care industry, so they bought a load of gloves. So it was a strategic purchase. In order to get the price they wanted, they had to buy quite a lot of gloves. It worked out being 5 years worth. And then they filled the warehouse full of them. And then they couldn't fit in the other stuff that they needed to support the other side of the business, which was schools, like exercise books. I don't know if you've ever been to school. I've got kids who go to school recently. You tend to need to write in something. A school that doesn't have an exercise book is a school that isn't functioning. So now the exercise books are building up in the yard. The yard isn't on the ERP system, as you would imagine, so no one can see it. So the orders are going down there. So then they buy another warehouse. They rent more warehouse space and put exercise books in there, which also isn't on the ERP system, so it still doesn't see it, and it's costing them a load of money. So the service level went down, and every day everyone got alerts on their phone telling them that perfect order fulfillment rate's dropping like a stone. It was just no one's job to do anything about it. So they measured it, they worried about it, but no one did anything about it because it was no one's job. Service was no one's job, it was everyone's job. And that happens in a lot of organizations. Inventory is, it's not no one is responsible for inventory, but everyone is responsible for inventory. So, we need to be able to be cleverer than that and smarter than that. And even if we're in procurement, we need to know, not just what suppliers are late, but which purchase orders are going to affect servers if they're late. So, even if you take something like SAP, it'll give me data. It'll tell me I've got 100 open purchase orders. It might even give me information. It might even sequence them based on date levels. But don't want to know which ones are going to be late and when they're going to be late. I want to know what's the impact of them being late. Which ones are going to hurt me? Which ones contain components that are in a bill of materials that are on a production order that if it doesn't arrive, these orders are not going to go out the door? Because that's real insight. That's what I'm after. I'm not after data. I'm after insight. Because I want to take an action. So really what we want to know is, not just how much inventory do we have, but where can I reduce inventory without impacting the service? Are we buying things we don't need? But why is understanding so difficult? Why doesn't everyone just do it? Well, the first thing is business models are complex. Because most companies don't really have one. They have products and customers. And what we're really after here is what is the clear value proposition that we're offering? To whom are we offering it? And what are our capabilities to deliver it? And are they aligned? What channels do we deliver that value proposition to that customer through? What is our network to ensure that we can deliver the supply chain, to our capabilities to deliver to that customer segment? And what are our processes? And uniformly, what is the strategy that brings it all together? And we've got multiple customer segments, and we've got multiple value propositions, but most companies just have one supply chain. Second thing is, channels are becoming increasingly complicated. So we're constantly talking now about omni-channel. So before it used to be one channel, you pick up the phone and place an order or even send a fax through. Now we've got omni-channel, so we've got multiple demand signals coming through to our businesses. Our supply chains are now increasingly complex. They're global. We're now dealing with suppliers the other side of the world rather than the supplier down the road. So we've got complex supply chains. So when you start to add them all together, then we need a complex organization. So we've now gone from sort of typical hierarchical organizations to matrix networks. And our processes are complex. So there's a sort of exponential complexity happening here, all in one go. And most companies just aren't set to handle that. They don't have the tools to handle that. They don't have the processes to handle that. They don't have the strategies to handle that. And below that, the system that sits underneath that is even more complex. So if I just take SAP as an example, if I just look at these are just the models, these are not even the tables. We've got huge amounts of data there from sales area, sort of a customization level, right down to our customer level, in order to cash, in purchase to pay, in our supply to demand. There's a great level of complexity just in understanding the systems. Most business people don't understand that. Most business people don't want to understand that. They just need to know, tell me the information I need to know. You click that. And then, you need to link it together with things like MRP that's supposed to bring all of this data together. Now, this brings me a little bit to every angle to the company that asked me to speak here, because I think about 2007, Jacques, I think I bumped into you in Dusseldorf. It was in the SAP session that was going on in a big conference that was taken by SCL Europe, I think it was, the event. And they said, we understand all this complexity. Not only that, we understand all the financial complexity as well, and how the interrelationship between finance and supply chain finance. And 20 years of working with SAP and peak projects like that. I think I said something that began with B and sounded like Rolex. That's a huge amount of complexity that you've got to understand there, and SAP itself doesn't do that. It doesn't do that. It can't manage supply and demand in that way. It doesn't, it presents things. But, so the systems that underpin it are incredibly complex. And then actually, not only that, not only do I need to understand the complexity, I need to be able to cut the data in such a way that are based around my customers, my segmentation of our business. Not just my customer segments or my product segments or my manufacturing segments, but I want value chain segmentation. I want to be able to run a report that says, are we delivering to our customers? And are all the component parts, from supplier to customer, working in such a way that's aligned to the delivery of customer delight? And if not, I want to know why not. So we've got complexity on top of complexity. But if I can do this, then the next question is, not having the tools isn't good enough. I need to organize my business around this. So I need to start focusing on, the sort of principles that came out of software businesses, so like agility, if I set up agile teams. Basing around customer value chain teams is one of the things that I do a lot. Jeff Bezos from Amazon said, he's got the 2 pizza rule. If a team is bigger than you can feed with 2 pizzas, it's too big. So it's getting people from across the organization together to work on the delivery of a defined outcome for each particular segment, because different customers value different things and different customers bring different levels of value. But at the moment, we generally have one set of supply chain processes all managing activities, not focusing on outcomes. But if we can work like this, and the challenge is breaking the status quo and breaking the existing hierarchy that exists in the organization, then we can reduce the politics, we can align, we can get rid of the agendas, we can get clarity on what the customer values and understand contribution across the business. And we can focus better on the 1 to 2 things that are actually going to drive value. So we can develop these T-shaped people who understand their part in the end-to-end flow, but understand what they need from the flow person before them and how to deliver it to the ones that are after them. So it's about taking this agile mindset and empowering it into the organization, because what this does is create engagement. If I can clarify the contribution that I pay to the delivery of customer value, and you free me to work with people in the organization so that we can determine the best possible way, and you give me the tools where I don't need to go to IT with a functional spec every single time I want a different field on a report, but I have the capability to answer my own questions when we need to, then we can just focus on the customer. And we can focus on ensuring them back. So we can start to join up across the organization and answer the questions that need to be answered. Because answering those questions before they happen, not after they happen, allows us to change the impact on outcomes. And this is what we're after, isn't it? We're after improvements in customer service, improvements in supplier performance, reduction in cost to serve. Maybe not the same things in different value chains, but certainly focusing on these in different areas. Why? Why is that important? Because it has a bottom and top line impact. Drives revenue, decreases expenses, improves return on working capital, human capital, fixed capital, improves the accuracy of our reporting so we have to waste less time downloading data, and reduces operational risk. Why? Because it's good for shareholders, it's good for stakeholders, it's good for customers, and it's good for employees. And you can have it all. This is a bimodal strategy. Every yang has a yin here. People seem to think it's either one or the other. I either focus on control or I focus on innovation, but you can have it all. You can do both. It's perfectly feasible to do both. It's probably a little bit more to describe than what I can fit into 30 minutes, but it is possible. It is possible. Given the number of people who walk in the room, I think my time is up. The guys at Every Angle asked me to write, I wrote a book recently for them. I think there's a free copy available for all of the delegates on how we can empower engaged employees through self-service analytics, so that you're more than welcome to have a copy of that. But in the short time that I had, thank you very much.